Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Imperial Diecast. And today I am going to show you the culprit that made me start a diecast plane collection. And that's this guy over here. A 1/500 scale Lockheed L-1011-100 Tristar in the Caledonian livery by... I have no idea who made this, really. So the story behind this is, as you know, I primarily review diecast cars, and in the autumn of last year I was actually purchasing a few more interesting 1/43 scale cars from a Spanish seller on eBay. And while I was browsing his listings, I came across this plane. It looked interesting to me because it's a tri-jet. I only had a couple of childhood planes that I've already reviewed in the past, but nothing really collection-worthy. And the price that he was asking for this plane, though, was €5. Okay, €5, that was such a ridiculously low amount of money that I just decided to toss it into my shopping cart and place the order. I never thought that it would actually inspire me to start collecting planes, but
6 months later,
here we are. So today I'm going to be reviewing this Lockheed. Now, for my generation, who grew up long after this plane had stopped its service on most of the airliners, we associate Lockheed as the company that's most famous for the C-130 Hercules, the AC-130, and of course the SR-71 Blackbird. But with the L-1011, they wanted to enter the commercial airliner business in the 1970s, but it didn't quite work out for them. Not because this wasn't a good airplane, because it was, but because their production was initially hampered due to their partnership with Rolls-Royce in providing the engines, and in the late 60s, Rolls-Royce had almost gone out of business before being nationalized by the British government. So that caused delays, and those delays allowed the competitor at the time, McDonnell Douglas, to work out a deal with American Airlines to buy their plane instead, which was also a tri-jet, namely the DC-10. The L-1011's first commercial flight was, I believe, in 1972, and production ran until 1984. And only 250 were made, which is lower than the production number of your typical airliners. So this was a somewhat rare plane and was nicknamed Whisperliner by Eastern Airlines, which was an American carrier. This L-1011 bears the Caledonian livery. The history of this airline is a little complicated because Caledonian Airways was a Scottish airline, a holiday charter that was founded in 1961 until it merged with another private operator in 1970 to become British Caledonian, and the Gatwick-based private sector rival to the newly formed and state-owned Heathrow-based British Airways. This worked out for another 18 years until 1988, when British Airways purchased British Caledonian, and upon doing so, used the name and livery to rebrand its own holiday charter subsidiary, British Air Tours, into Caledonian. So that's how we went from Caledonian Airways over British Caledonian to Caledonian, and it's also how Caledonian got access to the L-1011 widebodies that had previously been flying under the British Airways livery. Eventually, this airline was sold to Thomas Cook, who, as you know, ceased operations in 2019. So we'll begin the review by taking a look at the side of the aircraft, and you can see that we have the L1 door here and the Caledonian titles above the window line. And as we move along the side of the aircraft, you can see it is segmented into two parts with a yellow cheat line and a really beautiful purple livery at the bottom. Now you can tell this is the L-1011-100 because the rear door is located right behind the wing and not further back in front of the stabilizer. The L-1011-500 didn't have this smaller door here, and the larger door was located right in front of the elevator. We also have the registration of the plane, which is Golf Bravo Bravo Alpha Echo. And then up here we have a good look at the Caledonian livery on the vertical stabilizer. Now this is a trijet, which means it actually has 3 engines. This is engine number 1, this is engine number 2, and this is engine number 3. Now if we take a closer look at engine number 2, you will see that unlike engine number 1 and engine number 3, engine number 2 does not seem to have any fan blade detailing in the center. And that's not because this model just lacks the detail or anything, but that's actually because it's the way it is on the L-1011. You see, it's because there's no engine up there on the L-1011 in real life either. Instead, the engine is located inside here, and this entire thing here is simply an air tunnel, an S-duct that feeds air to the engine inside here. The number 2 engine exhaust detailing is pretty basic. As for engines 1 and 3, you can see some fan blade detailing in there. And these are supposed to be Rolls-Royce RB211s, although they don't have the Rolls-Royce logo on them. Now, there is another company that has made this exact same Caledonian. You see, I don't think Herpa ever made a model of this Caledonian L-1011-100, but in 1/500 scale, In-Flight 500 did. It's a little more detailed than this one. It has more accurate landing gear, it has cargo doors, landing lights, it has cockpit window frames, window wipers, and Rolls-Royce logos on the engines. But try finding an In-Flight 500 Caledonian these days. I mean, literally the only results I got was some listings on WorthPoint sold a long time ago. So taking a look at the wings, you can see that the detail here is actually really good. All the flaps, slats, and spoilers, air brakes, and ailerons are really designed accurately and sharply. There's no paint overlap. And this sort of detail also extends to the horizontal stabilizers here, which also look really good. Now, if you look at the fuselage, you can see that we actually have 2 dots over here. And when I first unboxed this plane, I thought it was like 2 paint chips, and I was trying to either get them off or perhaps even thinking about painting them over with white. But then I researched this plane and I realized that those are actually anti-collision strobe lights. And on some of the larger scale, like 1/200 L-1011 models, I could also see them. So that's real nice of them to have included that here. And it just confused me a little because they were placed diagonally instead of one behind the other, but that's the way they are on the L-1011. And here's a look at the front of the L-1011-100. And you can see that the front is alright. It doesn't have a lot of detail. The cockpit windows, for example, don't have any frames on them, and they don't have any window wipers. But they look alright. And now if we take a look at the landing gear, you can see that these are landing gear that look a little bit like the clunky landing gear of vintage Herpas, old generation ones. But I think they're a little bit smaller than that. And if we take a look at the bottom of the plane, you can see that there is not much detail here, except of course the trailing edge fairings on the wings, which are done pretty well. There is no logo here, so I don't know who the manufacturer of this plane is. However, we do have 2 holes, and that's because this plane actually comes with a stand. And for the price, remember, I paid only €5 for this. That is an incredibly great extra detail. The only plane manufacturer who regularly offers stands for their 1/500 scale models is Schuko Starjets. So this no-name company giving that is good, and you can see that, of course, it looks great on the stand, because it even comes with a nameplate saying Lockheed L-1011 Tristar. Now, unfortunately, this model is not scale accurate, so this may be very off-putting to detailed plane collectors, because this is bigger than 1/500 scale, but it is also smaller than 1/400 scale. It's somewhere in between. Since this is a longer L-1011 with a fuselage length of 54.40 meters, if you divide it by this model's length of about 11.63 centimeters, you will get something like 1/463 scale. So yeah, not an accurate casting, but in terms of details, I really can't complain. I'm happy with the detail level on offer for the price. This is definitely one step above vintage Herpa, and it even comes with a stand of its own, which you can't say for most Herpa models, and only costs a fraction as much as a new 1/500 scale Herpa. So thanks for watching this review, guys. I hope you liked it, and you might even be able to find this on the internet if you are lucky. Take care. This is Imperial Diecast, signing out.